It started on a rainy Monday morning. The lobby of Silverman and Drake buzzed with polished shoes, expensive suits, and fake smiles. And there she was, Lena, dressed in a plain gray uniform, her head slightly bowed, pushing a mop bucket across the marble floor. Some whispered, some smirked. "Hey, careful there. Maria, don't slip on your own mop water." One of the junior associates laughed, not even caring to get her name right. But Lena didn't flinch. She kept cleaning and listening. Inside the glass conference room, partners discussed layoffs, budgets, a big merger. Lena, wiping a glass panel outside, heard every word. And when they mentioned cutting non-essential staff, she paused. A storm was brewing in her dark, knowing eyes. Every day, Lena arrived an hour early, not just to clean, but to read. At the back of the janitor's closet, hidden behind buckets and brooms, was a stack of law books, Latin legal terms, case studies, contract law, things she read fluently, things she once taught in another life, before war, before displacement, before America. But here, she was invisible, just the cleaning lady. It was casual Friday. The associates were loud. "Did you hear her accent? Hilarious. Probably doesn't even have papers." They laughed harder when she spilled coffee on her shoes. No apology, just stares. She bit her tongue, but that look in her eyes wasn't shame. It was calculation. That night, after hours, Lena stayed late, alone. She walked into the partner's office, sat in the chair across from the desk, like she'd been there 1,000 times. Opened the computer, password, Silverman 123 careless. She checked a file. Case Medotech Acquisition. She knew that name. That was the same corporation that caused the collapse of her legal career in Colombia. The one that silenced whistleblowers, that crushed unions. She whispered, "No wonder you're merging with the devil." At home, Lena pulled out a dusty box. Inside were her Colombian law degrees, her credentials, her story. She once took down a corrupt oil giant before being forced to flee. But America didn't care for stories, only accents, appearances, and silence. Until now. The firm was preparing for a massive investor meeting. And Lena? She walked in early, not in a uniform, but in a navy blue suit. Clean lines, sharp heels. Receptionist. Can I help you, Mom?" She smiled. "No, darling, I'm here to help you." The staff froze. The partners walked in puzzled. And then it hit them, because standing behind Lena was Daniel Strauss, billionaire investor, majority shareholder, and the man she once defended in a whistleblower trial 10 years ago. Daniel took the mic. "This woman saved my company from collapse a decade ago. Today she's not here to clean your floors. She's here to clean your culture." Gasps. One partner dropped his coffee. Another stood flustered, stammering. "We had no idea she was." "You never asked," Daniel cut in. And just like that, Lena took her rightful seat at the boardroom table. They laughed at her accent, mocked her clothes, dismissed her presence. But she was never just the cleaning lady. She was the sharpest legal mind in the room. A refugee, a survivor, a warrior, and now their boss. Sometimes power wears overalls, and justice speaks with an accent. You ever watch someone smirk like they know the whole story, but they don't even know the first chapter? That's how it was with Maria. She walked into that conference room with coffee in her hand and a Harvard law degree in her bag, but to them, she was just the cleaning lady with an accent. It was a Thursday. The partners were holding a high-profile meeting about a billion-dollar client they were about to lose. Maria, wiping down the glass table, accidentally bumped into one of the senior partners. Greg scoffed. "Maybe stick to mops and buckets, sweetheart," he said loudly in front of everyone. People laughed. Maria didn't. She stared straight ahead, lips pressed tight, because she had seen men like Greg before. Back in her country, back when she was building her casework to protect women like herself from being erased by men like him. She'd fought harder battles than this boardroom full of suits. Later that day in their break room, she overheard two junior associates. "Did you hear her accent? I swear I couldn't understand a word. I heard she used to mop floors in a hospital. Yeah, but she's always watching us." Creepy. Maria took her tea and left quietly. But inside, she was memorizing names, filing voices into mental drawers, because truth has a way of echoing louder than cruelty. 3 days later, the firm was drowning in a legal mess. The client was threatening to walk away. No partner could crack it. No associate could untangle the mess. Maria, listening quietly during her cleaning rounds, realized she had seen a similar case in her asylum work. She went home, pulled out her old files, reviewed precedents, and drafted something on her laptop. By Monday morning, she left a copy of the brief in the managing partner's inbox. No signature, just results. When the managing partner, Mr. Blackwell, read the brief, he froze. This is genius," he muttered. She was wiping down the same table for the third time that day, not because it was dirty, but because it was the only way to stay invisible. Maria had learned that in this office, invisibility was safer than attention, because attention only brought cruelty. Hey, Maria didn't know janitors needed PhDs in mopping, or is it just Professor Mop in Spanish? She forced a smile. That kind of joke wasn't new, but that day it stung a little deeper, because she wasn't just cleaning up spilled coffee. She was also cleaning up their mess. The same team who'd lost a wrongful termination case that she could have won blindfolded. They didn't know about the night she spent studying, or the law degree locked in a drawer back home in Venezuela. They didn't know she passed the bar in her country twice, but the humiliation didn't end in the break room. A week later, Maria was called into HR. She thought maybe someone had finally noticed the harassment. But instead, HR manager, "We've received a complaint that you were spying on confidential case files left out in the open. Can you explain that?" Maria confused. "I was just cleaning the desk." "There were papers," HR manager interrupting. "You're not authorized to read anything on lawyer desks. We're issuing a warning. A warning for noticing their carelessness." She walked out of that meeting with her head down, but inside something had started to boil. Not shame, resolve, because she knew something they didn't. One of those lawyers had left behind evidence of misconduct, and if that ever came to light, careers would crumble. Flashback, Maria tutoring a young girl in a tiny apartment. Back home, Maria had taught girls from the barrios how to speak for themselves. She knew injustice like an old enemy, and she knew how to outthink it. When Maria at the public library doing research, she began logging everything, case files left unattended. Conflicts of interest, missing documents. She wasn't spying, she was building a case. Early morning at the firm, Maria alone whispering into her phone, and when the senior partner walked past her without so much as a nod, she hit send. To a man she once saved, a man who now owned 30% of the firm. The silent investor. They had laughed at her accent, dismissed her presence, tried to erase her dignity. But what they didn't know was that the quiet woman with the mop had the power to flip their entire world upside down, and she was just getting started. They followed the strategy in court the next day and won. Everyone celebrated. Greg took credit. Mr. Blackwell? He stayed quiet. But his mind was racing. He traced the paper back to Mariah's IP address. His hands trembled. He remembered something, a name, a young woman who had saved his daughter's life in a refugee legal clinic. Years ago, in another country, her name was Maria. The next morning, Maria was called to the main boardroom. She thought maybe she was being fired. Instead, Mr. Blackwell stood up. "Maria," he said slowly, "how long have you been hiding from us?" She looked confused. "Hiding what, sir?" "Your brilliance." The room went silent. Mr. Blackwell turned to the entire board. "Gentlemen, this woman holds a law degree from Harvard, graduated top of her class on a refugee scholarship." Gasps. "And she's the one who saved our biggest client." Maria stood still. Then she smiled, just a little. Greg stood up, furious. "This is ridiculous. She's the cleaning lady." Mr. Blackwell shot him a look. "No. She's the only reason we still have a firm." The tables turned fast after that. Maria wasn't cleaning the conference room anymore. She was leading meetings inside it. Greg? He was demoted, soon pushed out for ethical violations. Maria? She was now the diversity and equity counsel for the firm and the silent investor behind their biggest expansion deal. Because while they laughed at her accent, she was rewriting their future, word by word, page by page. Don't mistake silence for weakness. Some of us are just waiting for the right moment to speak. The chandeliers sparkled, the suits glistened, the champagne was cold, but the tension in the air was ice. It was the annual gala, the one where awards were given, names were praised, and people like Maria were never even invited, until now. As Maria walked in, wearing a simple but elegant red dress, a partner's wife scoffed. "Wait, isn't that the cleaning woman?" Laughter rippled quietly. A few people whispered, "Guess anyone can get in these days." Maria paused and smiled, because she knew in less than 10 minutes their world was going to shift forever. That week, Maria had discovered something deep. While helping with document audits, she uncovered a pattern. Clients of color were systematically overbilled. Low-income pro bono cases were deprioritized, and some junior staff were being passed over for promotions based on language concerns. She had it all documented: emails, reports, names. Negligence wasn't just a mistake here. It was a culture. Midway through the gala, just as Mr. Blackwell was about to announce a new partner, he stopped. He turned to the crowd. "Before I continue, there's someone you all need to hear from." The lights dimmed, and Maria was handed the mic. She stepped onto the stage, heart pounding but eyes focused. She started slow, calm, poised. "3 years ago, I walked into this firm holding a mop. Not because I lacked education, but because your system didn't allow me access." Gasps. "I watched partners ignore harassment complaints. I watched talented immigrants passed over for internships. I saw this place celebrate Diversity Month while mocking the accents of its own staff behind closed doors." Silence. "And yet when this firm needed saving, it was my brief that kept the doors open." Then she turned to the screen behind her. A slideshow began. Every unethical practice, every ignored complaint, every name. The final slide? Maria's new role, managing partner. Approved by the board. Effective immediately. Stunned gasps echoed. Greg, the man who once mocked her publicly, stood frozen. Mr. Blackwell walked up beside her. "You see, she didn't just save this firm once. She saved its soul, and we owe her more than applause." In the following weeks, a systemic overhaul began. Unethical partners were dismissed. Bias training was mandatory. New internship pipelines were open, especially for immigrant students. Maria led it all, quietly, powerfully. Her presence redefined the corporate identity of the law firm. No longer a place of elitism and closed doors, It became a beacon of inclusion and service excellence. She was no longer invisible. She wasn't just the girl with the accent, or the immigrant with the mop, or the ghost in the hallway. She was Maria Alvarez, Harvard graduate, advocate for justice, leader, survivor, rebuilder, and her voice was now the loudest in the room. They thought my accent made me weak. Turns out it just made me unforgettable. The wind was sharp, the courthouse steps were icy, and inside they were trying to erase everything she'd built. Maria sat in the federal hearing room, across from her 3 senior partners from her own firm. Men she once thought had changed, men she had protected. Now they were testifying against her. Turns out, not everyone was happy about the culture shift. Some resented the new hiring policies. Others quietly hated that Maria, a woman of color, an immigrant, was now in charge. So they conspired. Behind closed doors, they tried to get her removed. They leaked false stories to the media that she doctored documents, that she only got promoted because of diversity optics, that she was unstable. It was character assassination, disguised as concern. Reporters swarmed her house. Anonymous hate mail poured in. She was temporarily suspended while the board investigated. Everything she worked for on the line. And just like before, whispers followed her. She was just a cleaner. Does she even belong here? That accent. How could she lead anyone? The pain cut deeper this time, because it came from inside the very place she rebuilt. But Maria wasn't alone. One by one they came. A former janitor, now in law school because of her mentorship. A deaf intern who finally got hired because of her inclusion initiative. A widow who won a wrongful death suit because Maria fought for her when no one else would. They came to the hearing. Letters, testimonies, tears. Real people, real voices. Proof that leadership isn't about where you start. It's about who you lift when you rise. But that wasn't the twist. The real twist, the law firm had quietly accepted federal diversity grants. Grants Maria had secured based on policies the same 3 men now claimed to never approve. She had the paperwork, signatures, emails, dates, and in the back of the room sat an observer from the Department of Justice. He wasn't just listening, he was investigating. Turns out Maria wasn't on trial. They were. The final ruling? Maria cleared of all accusations. Her accusers fired for ethics violations and fraudulent statements. The firm facing a full federal audit and massive fines. Leadership restructured again, this time permanently. And Maria offered a position as head of ethical practice reform at the American Bar Association. She declined because she had other plans. We see her walking through a neighborhood legal clinic, helping a young woman fill out immigration papers. Her accent? Still strong, still beautiful, but now it echoed with authority. She wasn't just the voice of change. She was the system's conscience. They laughed at her accent. They mocked her background. They questioned her leadership. But in the end, she wasn't the one who needed to speak louder. They just needed to start listening. You can erase my name from your headlines, but you can't erase my impact from history.